welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business on a very mild and nice Thursday evening. Short sleeves and shorts were the picks of apparel today. I saw people on motorcycles and bicycles and kids playing, and it was just a February day to remember or forget, depending on what you think about global warming. So let's hope that the bugs get back on track because they were out today too. It was just a almost spring, borderline summer day. It was a beautiful day. Tonight we're going to continue our discussion from last week. I think we left out some stuff. It was a good, robust discussion, as I often like to have in this space. Can power and humanity coexist? The conversation continues. Hopefully we get a couple of people slide in. If anybody else, hopefully we get to pick up where we left off with Lisa if she's able to make it this evening. I know she had some other things going on, but I'm more than willing to make this happen with Jay and Bob. Glad you guys could join. I think we're formulating a consistent crew, and I'm happy for it, man. I think you guys are here to partake in these conversations without restraint. You add to, you don't take away. So I appreciate your presence. And as always, Danya, thank you for doing what you do here. Can power and humanity coexist? We answered this question in some regards last week, but there was some stuff we just didn't get to, and we have some caveats I think that are worth exploring. But to begin tonight, I'll start with this great quote. Uncle Ben once told Peter, with great power comes great responsibility. If you don't get the inside of that joke, it's Uncle Ben and it's Peter Parker. It's Spider-Man. So Uncle Ben once told Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Is that a true statement? Who makes that make sense? Is there a requirement of great responsibility when one attains great power? Jay, I'll start with you. I think you got the comic book / Marvel movie reference. So I'll start with you, buddy.
Yeah, as soon as you said Uncle Ben, I was like Rice, and then you said Peter. I was like, up, Spider-Man. A new code switch. But no, to your point, I think that this is what makes, when we have like conflict resolution, conflict navigation, or even DEI conversations, this is where a lot of people don't understand. Like when I'm talking to the non-Black counterparts, they spend more time trying to disprove the power that they have, the privilege that they have, versus recognizing that you have it and just leverage it. So a lot of times, like I have to tell them, like, I'm not mad at you because you have privilege. It ain't your fault you was born this way. Now, what you do with that privilege, we can talk about it. And a lot of times they want to show me that they struggling with me. Like, listen, I don't want to be in a struggle Olympics with you. But what I will like to do, if you have the power to leverage the playing field, leverage the playing field. Many times people ask me, like, and some people get it, being over a nonprofit, especially a Black man over a nonprofit, they automatically like label you as like this sleazy, gimmicky church pastor that's out here trying to steal money or do something shady. They don't care about my education. They don't care about any of that. But as soon as I get a white person to co-sign, all of a sudden I'm the greatest thing. It changes the algorithm. It changes the validity because it's just the constructs that we live in. And I just wish that more people understood you are doing more damage by trying to disprove something versus accepting what can happen and open more doors for individuals. And that's a prime example I think about every day. Somebody asks me every day, and usually it's my white counterparts, how can I help? Donating is not enough because what am I do with the money if I can't reach people? if you have access for me to reach more people, use your access to help me reach more people. And then we have the same conversation. Like, I don't understand why. You know why you don't understand why? Because you refuse to see the connections that you have and the doors that you could open just by you being in a position of power, whether you accept it or not. I'm gonna stop there.
No, I think that requirement of great responsibility for Uncle Ben's wonderful quote to statement to Spider-Man is that you have to be desiring of something greater uh, and more powerful in your posturing. You have to be active in a greater outcome. And what you're, I think, not to put words in your mouth, alluding to is the fact that some people hold positions of power and they kind of kneecap themselves as far as what they can do based on a desire not to show how much they could actually move the needle. Uh, it is a weird dynamic. It's the notion that I sometimes can't stand either, and I might be guilty of it from time to time. And when somebody says, "Oh man, I stubbed my toe today," and before they can finish telling the story, man, I walked out, twist my ankle. It's like you say, it's a competition of how much adversity you had to overcome, as opposed to acknowledging, I won't even tell the story of my twisted ankle because it actually wasn't twisted and I'm all right. But I don't have to pile on where this guy actually broke his toe, or this guy or this group of people actually are starting at a place that is near impossible to catch up from. I think it was well, I know MLK had the wonderful quote of you asking a group of people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and they don't even have boots. That's definitely paraphrasing. And then you got another one where people saying, "Hey, everybody started at the same time, but they didn't. Some people started this race a long time ago and have been able to attain some things, and think of themselves as fairly liberal and want to help and take care and maybe write a check. But like you said, Jay, sometimes that power that's possessed is, if you want to truly embrace the idea of a greater responsibility, it requires something different than just a check or a pat on the back or good job or what have you. It got to let some people in some kind of way. Bob, your thoughts on Uncle Ben? What, with great power comes great responsibility. What do you think?
So the challenge here is what is Uncle Ben talking about and what is anybody else talking about? Because I think I completely agree, by the way, with everything Jay Dwayne said. Totally agree with everything he said. The thing is, if we're talking about what is your true responsibility in the context of an ethical society and a good public policy, good community policy, good loving person to be, absolutely he's right. I mean, absolutely he's right. The dilemma is we don't have in our culture an agreed upon orientation in favor of that. So many people would just respond to that and go, "What are you talking about? I got the power. I can do whatever I want. That's what I get to do. That's what I get to do," because it's all about them. And so, unless we can impose a sense of the collective and a sense of outward responsibility as opposed to personal responsibility, we can have all the nice comments and all the good advice, but the person that's getting the good advice isn't going to listen to it if that person is selfish and self-centered. And we are doing less and less, I think, as a society to encourage or to model or to. We elect Donald Trump as president of the United States. What does that say about our values? You know, what does that say about who we are, what we want? You know, I ask people that voted for Donald Trump, you made him president of the United States. Is that what you're saying you want your kids to become? Because you're setting him up as the most prominent role model in the nation, if not in the world. And so are you saying to your children, this is who I want you to be? If you're not saying that to your children, then what are you saying by voting for Donald Trump? I mean, if that's what you vote for, if that's who you elevate, if that's who your kids go, wait a minute, that kind of behavior gets me president of the United States? Okay, how does that fit with what Uncle Ben said? I mean, you know, so I think that Uncle Ben's right, but the problem is we've got so many conflicting messages going on, and we don't have people standing for a good or ethical or giving moral ground. We have people standing for what's in it for me. And so, you know, I'm close to the leadership and character program at Wake Forest, and this is exactly why, because that program is about introducing and showing the value of legitimate leadership and the value of legitimate character to the life of the person that's being educated, and to the people that person that's being educated is going to be around and be guiding and be modeling to, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And but the starting place is, how do we, you know, if we're not investing the time, and so many people don't feel like they have the time to spend the time to talk about things like values and whatnot. They're too busy making money, too busy. And when I say making money, too busy making money because they value money, or too busy making money because they got to eat. I mean, you know, so it's both and. I mean, I know people that make $500,000 a year that, oh, I wish I could spend more time with my children, but I don't have time. Well, yeah, you do. You just choose not to, because you've got all these other things you've got to spend money on. So, you know, your point. It's a complicated question. It's a very complicated question.
Well, I like that you introduce values and morals, Bob. I think that's important. I think that's the crux of that question, right?
I think it is. Yeah. Well, I think it absolutely is. And unless we center, if we center giving, and we center others, and we center an objective third party kind of value system that's not about us, then power can coexist with humanity. Then money can coexist with humanity. Money can coexist with generosity. But we've got to center other. We've got to center lack of selfishness. We've got to center giving as opposed to taking. And we, as a culture, don't do that. As a culture, we are a capitalist culture. Corporate boards of directors, their obligation legally is to build the value to the shareholders. It doesn't matter. It's not about values. It's about building money value to the shareholders. That's their directive. That's the prime directive. And that's what our culture is built on. And so where does that take us?
That's the place we're going in this conversation. I think we'll get to some aspect of that in the next question, because morality is critical, being heroic, and that's what Spider-Man is or was. You know, even when he was tested, he came back to the heroic side of things. I think those are what's required for that statement to be true. That's the only way that statement is true. If you think that you have responsibility that is outside of yourself, that's the only way that statement makes sense. If you have great power and great responsibility comes with that, because you are in favor of the greater good. Yeah, good way to go back and forth over some comic book stuff. I appreciate you guys. I think this question will kind of steer us towards where you were leaning, Bob. So I'll start with you. What, in your opinion, are the benefits of power? My quick three were influence, control, and irresponsibility. And I say irresponsibility in the shadow of what you just said, because when somebody has power, they sometimes like, I don't have to worry about anything. So as a thought in terms of the benefits in quotation marks, because we're still going to have this objective conversation where if you think subjectively, then you could think benefits in a way that considers the whole. But if you think objectively, you can be honest about unpacking the ideas around how someone else thinks of the benefits of power. Because we've seen historically, whether it's the presidency or whether it's a dictatorship or whether it's a regime, we've seen those benefits not benefit others. So you can take this wherever you want to go, Bob, but just think about it in the context of what, in your opinion, are the benefits of power?
Let me start the answer with what I think the benefits of power are to too many people that seek and gain power, and that is control. And they want control over others. They want control around getting what they want. They want control to further their self-interest. They want control to diminish people. They want control in every kind of negative way, in my opinion. And you look at all the stuff about the in Hollywood, the Me Too stuff. You look at I'll call it in general terms the morality crisis in churches. You look at it in policing. You look at it in politics. You look at it in lobbyists. You look at it. It's about getting what I want and having the ability to do that. The positive advantages of power are influence, positive influence. The positive advantages of power are freedom from the imposition that others can put on you with their own power. And I think that's the biggest benefit, quite frankly, is the freedom that power can give you. But with freedom, then you've got the power to use it which way you want to use it. And the question is, what do you do with it? And when you when you even little things like when you walk around, when you walk down the sidewalk, what kind of messaging do you send out to other people on the sidewalk? What kind of messaging do you send out to the children that you come across? You've got the opportunity in every encounter to convey a positive and an uplifting impression or message, and you've got the opportunity to convey a gnarly, negative, arrogant, pick a term, message. If you have power, you actually feel a greater freedom to do anything you want. So the question is then, what do you do with it? So the freedom that power brings, just like the freedom that money brings, and money and power are often, interconnected, but if it gives you the opportunity to move the needle in good directions, I do think you have an obligation to use it that way. Because with power, I do believe power is a gift. It is not something we're born, some of us are born with privilege, and with privilege comes power, but it's not it's if we achieve power in whatever way, born with it, or happen to earn it, through what we do is still, I think, kind of a gift. And so what do we do with it? We live in a world. We don't live by ourselves. So what do we do with it?
That's Uncle Ben's challenge to Spider-Man. What you gonna do? You know, great responsibility. But yeah, I think that influence, that control, I think control is the more dire, potentially nefarious commingler with power, because people who generally have, if it's a spouse who is dependent, at some points they do that thing that, you know, is called a power trip. You know, remind them of everything that they buy, all whatever they spend money on, this jewelry, these furs, and what have you. It's been in a million movies. So that power trip can display the traits of an individual who holds some power.
And,
now,
and to Jay Dwayne's point earlier, you know, if I have the power to open a door to let somebody in that otherwise can't get in, then if I can do that, I need to do that. It doesn't then also mean that I have to take over the conversation and manage the conversation and lead the whole charge. If a person can't get in a door that needs to get in a door to do something constructive, I can open that door. It also doesn't that I should do that. It also doesn't mean though that I have to take over. So again,
you don't attach expectation to that opening of the door. Yeah. You just open the door, which is what I was going to leave off with, the keeping up thing. If you do stuff for somebody, then you do it. If you open that door, the door's been open. It was for a purpose. Whoever goes in, you don't follow them and grab. Oh yeah, and then you got to do this and you got to do that. You got to do this. And you know, it's the gesture, and it's the willingness to concede that power.
And that's really my point. That's really my point. The part of the problem with power is if you got power, you don't know when to let go and let it go on and let it. You feel like you got to, and so there's that learning piece of doing what your responsibility is to be helpful, but then doing what your responsibility is to let go and let it be in the hands and the charge of the person who has the passion and the interest and all of that sort of thing that only needed your access.
So I'll say this before I go to Jay for the same question, of course. One of the benefits of power can be to be magnanimously graceful. Your grace and your sharing of that power can really do something big for somebody who did not have that expectation or that thought that they could graduate to a new level. So, Jay, that's something I think you were alluding to in your first statement. And Bob, that's lockstep with that opening of the door. That can be significant for someone else. So, Jay, coming to you, what, in your opinion, are the benefits of power? Benefits in quotation marks.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I was listening to Bob and even listening to you. And I think that, going back to the original question just for a minute, the first question is that I think that that's what Uncle Ben was talking about. The regulation of self is the responsibility. Because, you know, power, influence, privilege, all of those things can be addictive if not managed. I kind of relate it to my Reese's Buttercup. I love Reese's Buttercup. If I start eating one, I'm going to eat another one. You know what I mean? I don't stop.
Peanut Buttercup, man. Peanut Buttercup.
Yeah, what I said?
You said Buttercup.
Oh, Reese's Peanut Buttercup. Yeah, there you go. If I eat one, I'm going to eat two. That's like guaranteed. You know what I mean? And I might be half bag where I'm sitting there saying, like, I need to stop. But the idea that there is more there keeps the craving coming. So if a person doesn't have the ability to regulate themselves, they will mismanage that power and may cause collateral damage in ways that they didn't even imagine. And so the benefit of that is really the larger scale benefit of power is that you can change the trajectory of anything that you influence, good or bad. And I think people miss that part about it, is that you're in a position, whatever that may be. And most of us spend time. Now, this is true. The same for, even because I do love the Marvels. The same thing. Every hero didn't sign up to be a hero. Every hero has that same, soliloquy of, I didn't ask for this. Every last one of them. But it's not about what you was asked for. It's about, well, now you're in this position. What are you going to do with it? If you mismanage it, you cause damage. If you manage it well, you can regulate some of the bad things that are happening. But I do think that it's a constant war with yourself to regulate how you are getting too caught up in whatever. I hate to go scripture but it is like, this is what Paul was talking about when he said live a fasted life. You don't ever want to get to a point where anything becomes so consistent that it controls you, or you need it and you crave it. You have to get to a point where you will be able to, like, even if I have influence, like for instance, with me, for some reason, I was giving the gift of influence when it comes to oration. There are a lot of opportunities that I could have taken advantage of, but I had to implement integrity. You know what I mean? And a lot of people don't understand it. And there are times that I've been like straight out struggling, but I would rather struggle doing the right thing than having things easy doing the wrong thing. And that's where the great responsibility comes. It's not always at a magnitude of like, I'm a Beyonce or Jay-Z level or Oprah Winfrey level. You know what I'm saying? It's at whatever level of influence you have, operate in that realm of influence, but make sure you regulate whatever it is that you have internally working against you and for you, so that power doesn't become corrupt.
Yeah, there's definitely moderation, I think, is the word that I like in that statement you made when you cited Paul. Is, just don't be greedy, don't be power hungry, don't be Reese's peanut butter cup hungry. Just take what you need for the moment and live that fasted life that you just mentioned. I don't know if you did you name some benefits in your mind?
Oh yeah, I did say. I remember I said the benefit is that you can change the trajectory of anything that you influence,
just to change,
good or bad. Yeah,
that inside piece.
No, that's outside too. Like whoever you can. Yeah,
the
inside
start.
and outside. Yeah,
the start. Yeah, you said the start part. Go ahead. Continue.
No, you're right.
So yeah, knowing that if you realize that you hold something that can be effective both within and without, I think if you're a decent human being and you consider the whole, once again, consider again, your day is your day, but what can you do to potentially make someone else's day? And Bob, you said it, walking down the street, speaking, holding the door, an actual door for someone. I had a lady, I was at the grocery store, I think Monday or whatever it was, and a lady was right beside me. We both finished loading our groceries up at the same time. And I looked around for the place you take the cart when you're outside, the little railing thing that holds the carts. And she said, "Can I get that for you?" I said, "That's pretty sweet of you. That made my day." And she took the cart, and I might not ever see her again, but that wasn't about a power dynamic. That was just a human moment. And I think that's what the person that has power has to make sure they stay in touch with. Just stay in touch with those human moments. So if you get a level of power influence, just remember that somebody out there, they could use a hello, or just if you got it, give it to them, whatever that may be. Opportunity. I'm a person that spends a lot of time networking, and whenever I see a dot that I can connect, I'm glad to do it. I really am. Um, and Jay, to your point, once more, and I'm coming right to you. That being in certain positions and knowing that you can be effective by some measure to someone else and maintain your integrity, your morality in the process is a beautiful thing. Because just like you, temptation is there, man. But I know I can't do certain things and be who I am. I just know I can't. And I don't want that weird feeling I get for that temptation that comes sometimes to be outside of my character. I don't like that either, bro. Go ahead, man.
No, I was gonna say, like, adding to what Bob was saying earlier too. I do believe that culturally, especially in America, we have a sliding scale of morality, and it's always based from a perspective of um from an oppressed perspective. Let me explain. Like, when I remember when I lost my job one time, because I done lost them several times. Now I'm a pro at it. But I remember when I lost my job the first time, and the kids broke their blinds in the room, and I spazzed out. I was like, "That blind cost $38. You think I got $40 to spend?" And the kids was in shock, like, "You ain't never complained about anything because what? We can afford it." But when you started budgeting and looking at money, now all of a sudden you pulling in the reins and like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. We got to save, we got to do this. So it's a stressful thing because guess what? I now was influencing because I had the power. It was draining and sucking the energy out until I had to think about it. Like, these kids never knew this side of life. So why am I introducing it to them this way? There's a way to introduce budgeting, but I didn't have to introduce it this way, which could have caused a trauma response where they want to spend on everything. But those things happen so often. And so once you get back financially where you were, you don't care if they break something. You don't care if they drop a dish, like, oh, we'll get it. All of those things change. And so as you become more and more aware of the areas that you influence, the way that you look at morality does change a bit. And sometimes that can be to a disadvantage, just like you have people who don't realize it's a privilege to not want to learn about racism. Unfortunately, Black people don't have a privilege in not learning about racism because they are born in it. They are introduced in it. But our non-Black counterparts can say, okay, it's too soon for Tommy to learn about this. We want him to have a childhood, but what about my child who didn't have a childhood and was called an N-word for the first time in kindergarten? So we were forced to have a different. See, that's a luxury right there. That's a privilege right there, that you can safeguard your children from certain harms that I have no control over. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, being in the racial equity, RELC, racial equity learning community, being in that space, wearing my other hat, even to learn, some people to learn about race in America, it's on their own terms. So even, it's a whole, maybe not like this, maybe like that. So even that dynamic can be in an acknowledgement of someone's power. We want to hear from this person, not this person. And what's acceptable, what's radical, what's too cringy or might hurt somebody's feelings. All of that plays a role. You already jumped ahead to this, Jay, but I want you to revisit something you just said, because the next question was what role does economics play in the power humanity dynamic? That's something we were going to get to last week. And I know Bob had plenty to say on it. But Jay, you just touched on it, because that other dynamic of it, people automatically think power, money. Oh, the dynamic is going to be something that's absent humanity because I'm chasing material things. But what about that other side that you just alluded to, Jay? When you have and then you lose, and it affects you emotionally, psychologically, and how you react to your loved ones, because that water you holding on to in terms of your inability to make ends meet for that moment is economical. but you're still holding power because these are your children. And look what it skewed you to do and react because some blinds got broke. And it was because you had less at the moment. So economics plays a significant role in this power humanity dynamic. You can lose touch because you don't have enough. Jay, you wanted to get something in before I go to Bob, or you want to?
Oh, I thought you said you wanted me to open that up a little bit.
I want you to open up what you said, but I'm gonna go to Bob first because I know he had some of it. Yeah, but you touched on it beautifully from that dynamic. I like that. So you got to the question before I got to it. But Bob, you go ahead and go for this one, and then we'll go back to you, Jay.
Yes, so that's really what Jay Dwayne was just talking about is really an interesting kind of thing, because in truth, the respect for the blinds should exist regardless of your economic circumstances. And what we do when we have economic flush, we let things go that we shouldn't let go. I mean, breaking the blinds out of negligence is the same issue whether you've got $1 million in the bank or whether you have nothing. It's the same issue. And so we need to be teaching our children to be respectful of the blinds. Now, if they break the blinds accidentally, again, that's an accident. That happens. And equally so, it shouldn't matter whether you have $1 million in the bank or you have nothing. An accident is an accident. A negligence is negligence. And so, but what we do is we let finances and so forth impact our emotion and our modeling around behavior and so forth. And we have a more, I'll use the term reckless attitude toward responsibility if we have a positive economic situation than if we have a negative economic situation. Now, and there's a crossover there, right? Because if we have a really negative economic situation, we might be more reckless because we're in despair. We might be more reckless because we don't know what to do. So there are crossover lines in all that, but I think that, and again, in our culture, we mix all that stuff up in such a way. We don't establish a value system that's independent of our circumstances, such that we can hold that value system as a stake in the ground, regardless of our circumstances. And I think that again, it's a challenging thing because circumstances should not change core values, except that if your children are hungry and you have no money, you do what you need to do to feed your children.
That part. So yeah, the compromises of one's moral compass or the code that I speak of can be easily fractured when your stomach gets to growling a little bit, and then don't let it be about some little ones that you care for, especially if you have not had that door held open and if it's been closed in your face. So that human element, that fragile part of us can be reactionary and can do some things that may not seem in our best interest, but might alleviate some significant pain and suffering at that very moment. Jay, I'm coming back to you if you had any more to add to that, because like I said, you presented a different dynamic for how that question was going to be most likely received what we're alluding to last week. But now you introduced the other side of that coin. So go ahead.
I will say the economic piece is also a touchy. It's an interesting conundrum, especially for the Black man, because in America, the Black community is the only community who was the economic resource, who transitioned to 1 minute we were the product, then we were the labor, but never counted as human until later on, and then we still are not counted as a whole human, in theory. And so the idea about economics, we were the economy, and then they created an economy around it so that we couldn't benefit from the economy we created. That's one thing. The other thing is a man, a good man, a great father, a great husband. Those are titles that man can never label himself with. Only somebody else can label that. The children will label you as a good father. The wife will label you as a good husband. You can never go around and say, I'm a good man, because somebody else has to do that. Only when it comes to men. He's arrogant and he's these and he's that. Because a man is only prepared to provide, whether providing physically or economically. And so when it comes to finances in the Black community, that money is more than just getting money. It now gives you an avenue to be accepted as more of a human. It now gives you access to things that your birth district wouldn't allow you to be in. So money has, for a lot of people in the Black community, an emotional tie-in to the possibility of hope, that sometimes going after money is not just going after money to have money. It's the things that the money will provide me to be a basic human. It's almost like education. Getting a degree wasn't about me just getting a degree. It's like, oh, now I'm accepted as the minimum. Not the overqualified, the minimum. Now I'm okay to say I'm teachable, whereas my white counterpart is like, oh, he's great. He got a master's degree, working on his daughter. He's this. But me, it's just meaning that I am a human. And so money component in the Black community have so many different nuances connected to it, that economics is an emotional thing. And that's why I take people to a different level when we talk about it.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Bob.
We don't have to unpack this evening, but I don't want to let it go. Jay Dwayne said earlier about him having the gift of oration. And then he's just said what he just said, which I think is powerful. Challenge question is, Jay Dwayne, with his gift of oration, with his voice, with his presence, with his this, with his that, could very easily today be the guy that's leading one of these churches that's taking advantage of all of the poor that are a member of that church so that he can live in a $10,000 house in a gated community on the north side of town. He chose not to. He has chosen not to. He knows, he's nodding. He knows, but for him, he couldn't do that because that would be a compromise of morality. That would be a compromise of ethics. That would be a compromise of self. The thing that I don't want to lose track of it, and I don't want to, and this is not about Jay Dwayne. We can spend time talking about how it is that he has that kind of compass and he has those kinds of constraints that keep him over here as opposed to allow him to go over there. The challenge question is, what do we need to do to help people in our culture be as strong as he in that orientation, such that we don't have the proclivity toward being the opportunist, but we have the proclivity to being the benefit to our community.
To one thing, and then I'm going to let Jay answer that to the best of his ability. because we're getting close to time, but I want to make sure that we do have time to unpack that, Bob, and I think that's a good segue. I'll leave some of the questions that were more focused on the plight of Black men and unpacking that and discussing that in terms of the uh, power dynamic or lack thereof power, because I did want to have at least one female in the space, and Lisa is generally that person. But like I said, she was busy tonight, so we'll save some of that for later. Tack on to this if you can, Jay, and Bob, you can be thinking about it too, because this is, I think, the underlying question. What do you think conditions us to devalue one another to such a degree? And I think that goes without saying. We see more of that than we see anything else here lately. We don't see a lot of opportunities for connectivity and that outward sharing of humanity. We see a lot of how can I get over and how can I come up? And to your point, Bob, Jay said tomorrow, hey man, come down to my church and check me out. I might be a little, like, wait a minute now, where did that come from? But I go because I know him as I do now. Don't mean he don't get power hungry and say, if I just keep talking this talk, people give me money. So it's a slippery slope. So on top of responding to Bob, thanks, Cordell. Appreciate you, man. On top of responding to Bob, if you can remember, I'll remind you if you need to, what do you think conditions us to devalue one another to such a degree? Because that's the underlying thing in this response I think you're gonna give.
Ooh, to answer Bob's question, first of all, I don't know, Bob. That's one thing that I hate about myself. Like, I literally do hate, like, how I always think of things 360 and I consider others all the time. Even when I have the upper hand, when somebody does me wrong and I want to get them back, I just won't do it because I'm thinking about it 360 and like, that's still not the right thing to do. And I hate that about myself. Sometimes I want to be like, let me just do it. But I don't know. And I know that that's something that I have that a lot of people don't have. And so that's actually one of my biggest insecurities. And I make sure I distance myself because I can easily also be taken advantage of, because I always see the potential, kind of like what we talked about. You're optimistic. I see the potential, and I believe that a person can tap into it at any moment. So I'm hoping that they'll tap into their potential. At the same time, it could be to my detriment. Now I forgot your question, Felton.
So what do you think conditions us to devalue one another to the degree that we do? But I appreciate your answer. I'll throw this in. I think the thing that gets others to be of a similar headspace as yourself is doing exactly what you're doing, and that's living it. I try to make sure that I carry myself in the way that I desire to be received. And I think you do as well. I think the majority of people that occupy this space do. And I think that goes a long way to potentially showing somebody there's other things to consider than chasing that brass ring or that golden apple. Being a decent human being is critical to living a good life. It really is. And I mean, that don't mean you get rich, because that's one of the things we've done here. We've equated monetary success and gains to some element of accomplishing something that's in the line of happiness. We've totally skewed things. That, Bob, you were witness to a discussion I had with a young man when I was saying the middle's enough. A lot of times you don't have to be here. Who wants to be there? But the middle's okay, bro. It's okay to just be a decent human being, able to eat, able to put food on the table, able to keep the lights on, able to live a decent life. If you got four wheels and they spin under you, it's a car. It don't have to be a Lambo or Mercedes or something outlandish. I think and MLK spoke a lot about this before he left here. Materialism is detrimental, man. It can be a detriment to a healthy existence. So I agree with that. Go ahead, Jay.
I was gonna say, as a black man, I can only speak about American culture because I live this. But American culture was founded on those principles. It literally was established on, I'm gonna come over here. Your way of life is not good. Our way of life is better. And if you don't assimilate, we will kill you. That mindset is still present today. Somebody has a better way, a better idea, even down to the way parents look at their children. They look at their children as property. They don't look at their children as small humans and individuals. They look at them as, that's my child, that's this. And they look at their spouses as, that's mine. How many pastors we've heard to say my members, my church, it's like somewhere in the American infrastructure and psyche, we have developed this mindset that the only way to be a person of importance is to control and have a certain level of power. And if I can't have it on the job, you know what I mean? I have it at home. And if I can't have it at home, I have it with some weird relationship. I will have it some way. I'm going to have power one way or another because that is what makes us important. And we have to counter that. We have to start telling people that you are powerful just being yourself, not powerful by who you can manipulate, mold, shape, and influence. And I don't think we have enough conversations about that. They're saying you're not successful unless you have a lot of areas of influence, a lot of areas of power. And power starts from the time that we come in this world. And it's instilled in us every single day. And so it feels weird when somebody is asking us to counter that desire for power.
It does. It does. Individualism was the main course of the day when this country was founded, because you bring European ideals over here and it's about quartering off a piece of land, it's mine. And if you try to absorb anyone who was already here, you had to condition them to accept that individualism was what they had to put as front and center their priority. And that was hard to do with the Native Americans because they had a mentality of the communal. They were communal. They were considerate of the community. They were thoughtful about the community to a large degree. But the individualness is what was pounded into so many people's heads here. So yeah, you're right. That is American as apple pie. That's a big piece of what we do. Bob, give me a quick and dirty on this understanding of what do you think conditions us to devalue one another to such a degree.
The culture of selfishness that's rooted in the capitalist concept. We have so shown ourselves, in fact, not shown ourselves in story, but in fact, to what Jay Dwayne says, we will obliterate what doesn't align with what we want. And we will take advantage of anyone to get what we want. And we will modify our terms of religion, our terms of faith. We will modify our the facts of science to support whatever it is that gives us the ability to control and get what we want. And so if we build an entire world, we control the history books, we control the narrative, we build the myth, we build the legend, we operate the way we want. We don't honor truth. My phrase, myth and delusion. How do we feel and embrace the humanity of our neighbors and brethren in truth, if we have that kind of core, how do we do that? How can we do that? And to Jay Dwayne's point, you know, most families marry because it makes sense profitably. It fits a societal advantage. Our children are supposed to be the way we want our children to be. They're supposed to excel in the ways we want them to be. They're little mini me's, and their job is to reflect well upon us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We compete for schools for the children to give them the best. Oh, the best is basically to get them to do what we want them to do. And so yeah. So what do we expect out of that? What do we expect out of that? We get, and we know this from organizationally, we know this. We get what we measure.
Yeah, to your point, and I think to sum this up, I was at a gathering, conference, what have you, on youth development, and at the table I had some observations, and we all kind of exchanged ideas when it was that time to have table talk. And one of those things was the inequities of the public school system, the inadequacy. It's not functioning at a level to make sure that it's understood these values will contribute to better outcomes for you. It's kind of like just a process as opposed to a good moment to get a young mind and really do something with it. And that's nationally. I mean, the federal government needs to do better in terms of investing in our schools. So yeah, I think the conditioning happens largely in the media. That's the place that I think it really is to the detriment of us. And again, you know, MLK was talking about all of the advertisements that were going out to housewives and this, that, and the other, making them think they needed the latest and greatest when wasn't nothing wrong with the pots and pans they had already. So that exchange kind of prioritizes something outside of another person, another human being. I'm going to end on a quote that I came up with, and because we talked about it in a way, slavery, but I think of this comment or this quote in terms of slavery, of both the physical type that was experienced by a group of people, a specific group of people here in this country, and I think about it in the mental type of slavery. But slavery cannot exist without imbalance. Valuing something besides the greater good, valuing the whole and not the few, leaves us void of our humanity. We got to value the whole. We have got to value the whole. We can't just value the few. So I think I said that quote. I might not have. We have to play it back later, but I hope it comes across as I intended. That we only get beholden to something or locked into something if there's an imbalance. So we got to value the whole of everything, everybody here, not just a few. So let's be better human beings. And this has been great, man. We make it happen how we make it happen. But I appreciate you guys showing up and showing out this evening. Bob, thanks. Jay, thanks. Danya, appreciate you doing what you do. Y'all be cool out there. Enjoy this nice spring evening in February.